that, of course, is our Week 7 news and injuries. The number one piece of news that we're reporting, and you and I have already both taken action on this. We both took action within like a second of finding this out. And that, of course, is that Adam Schefter has reported Antonio Brown's suspension, which is going to end after Week 8, which is after next week, that people are starting to show interest. Mm-hmm. What do you think? What's going on? I mean, obviously, I'll just full disclosure, I picked him up as soon as I got that text from you.
I mean, I love that we talked about this 3 weeks ago on our quarter season awards show and said, why not stash him now? And so I had him in my deeper bench leagues. I scooped him up everywhere else outside of my family league because I texted my fucking brother like a moron before I scooped him. He picks him up and then says, good looks to me. Like, fuck.
Oh, man.
But yeah, absolutely. This is like what the end of your bench is made for. You know, could he just not show up to anywhere and no team takes the risk? Of course, and it's a burn spot. Could he show up somewhere, combust, and get kicked out? Yes, of course. It's Antonio Brown. It's why he's not signed as is. But ultimately, I mean, still, when he's on the field, we haven't seen it in quite some time. We saw that game with the Patriots, and he scored a touchdown, and we haven't seen him since then. But he looked every bit as strong of AB as we've seen. And he you know, the first few years before that probably was in the conversation, maybe the leading of the conversation, the best receiver in the league. So he could step in.
Probably so.
He could step into plenty of wide receiver cores and be their best guy. Now, the rumors are Seattle, and I know both me and you are like, oh, no, not there, like of all places. Well, you own Russell Wilson, don't you?
No, but I do. I own DK Metcalf, though.
See, me too. I have DK Metcalf in 2 out of 3 leagues, and I'm like, you know, I still think DK will be that. At the end of the day, he's that big alpha on the outside that's streaking down the field. Like he's still going to do what he can do. I'm a little more worried for Lockett if Brown goes there because they're saying he would be the slot guy, Antonio Brown. And that's where Lockett, you know, he moves all over. He does a lot of his work out of the slot. If he has those snaps siphoned from him, that's going to hurt. But I mean, Russell Wilson already on pace for 61 touchdowns with 3 wide receivers.
Really, 61?
So on pace for 61, yes. 19 leads the NFL, and he already has bye week in touchdowns right now.
Oh, right.
It's a crazy pace, like almost 4 a game, what Russell Wilson's doing. Insanity. And that's, imagine if he adds Antonio Brown to that mix. He's already a cheat code. It would just be unfair. Just obviously would be a little bit of a negative to DK. I think a bigger negative to Tyler Lockett. And just for Antonio Brown, there's less crowded places for him to go. Like where would be your number 1 spot to see him go?
Well, real quick, just continuing to touch on Seattle, and I agree with you on the DK. I mean, DK generally is pretty consistent, like 4 catches a game.
Right.
You know, and I don't see him necessarily going below that, even if you add someone like Antonio Brown. I don't think it's the ideal spot for him, although maybe you have to take into account coaching and stuff like that. Maybe it's like we're going to look for someone like Pete Carroll who will let people walk all over him. I don't know. To me, the number 1 spot for him, maybe not the number 1 spot, but the first thing I thought of was Green Bay.
Yeah.
Which, man, that would be pretty awesome. What do you think?
They're right in my top 1 or 2. We talked about that on the quarter season awards. Like that's the best spot. Devontae Adams, yes, the alpha, the number 1, but there's nothing consistent behind him. Allen Lazard was having a good year, but groin injury, who knows how he comes back. MBS clearly boom or bust option. I mean, got Aaron Rodgers. The one question is, do those egos coexist? Like it could be the most beautiful marriage, Rodgers and Antonio Brown. I mean, the ball placement of Rodgers, the crispiness of Antonio Brown's routes. I hope that happens. That would be just fucking poetry to watch. But that would be a great spot. I actually would really like to see him go to the Cardinals. I know.
Oh man.
You know, Hopkins, a similar argument, like Hopkins, the alpha, but, you know, is Kirk, yes, he's had a couple nice games and, you know, would be a great slot, like only guy, but still Antonio Brown would bring so much more to that team that pushes the pace so fast in year 2 of the air raid. Kyler Murray taking great steps, obviously as a runner, has his inconsistencies as a passer, but a guy like Antonio Brown working the underneath alongside Hopkins would be sexy. And then in terms of a sheer volume standpoint, the Eagles and the 49ers offer just like, there's not a clear-cut number 1 on either of those teams. And he would fill like that alpha volume target hog with decent quarterback play. There's obviously some shittier teams, the Jags being one of them that could use an alpha target hog. I also love the Lions as a number 2 for that argument of like a good quarterback, a decent number 1. But I mean, he could take Kenny Galladay's number 1 spot within a blink of the eye if he's still Antonio Brown. So yeah, that's my top 5 is Cardinals, Packers, Eagles, Lions, 49ers rounding that out. And then the Jaguars at number 6, just because it's that spread air raid, like the Jay Gruden West Coast. Antonio Brown fits that perfectly. Those are the top 6 spots I'd have him.
I would say those are all pretty good. Some of them seem really unlikely to me. At first, I was like, well, he would never go there. But now, I mean, he is in mode right now, I assume, were he a sane human being, which I admit is a hypothetical. It's not a thing. We haven't seen him as a sane human being in quite a long time. He seems to be in desperation mode, as in like, I just want to get back in the league.
Yeah.
Like this guy got a major slice of humble pie, or maybe a whole humble pie. I mean, best wide receiver in the NFL 2 years ago. He's out of the game, and he's now like groveling to get back into the league. I think he could fit in a lot of these places that you said. Cardinals, that's interesting. Maybe even Larry Fitzgerald could, be a mentor of sorts. I don't know if Antonio Brown's the type that listens to people, but
absolutely,
he's as good a role model as you can get on a team. So any of those would be awesome. Personally, I'd hate to see him go to somewhere like Detroit and just get wasted. I mean,
yeah, they just feed Adrian Peterson 30 times a week, and even though they signed Antonio Brown. But you're right. That was why we talked about him in the quarter season awards, is we hadn't heard anything about him, which no news is good news. And now the first thing we hear about him is the teams are interested. So he stayed quiet, after humble. He's like a clown show getting the fucking humble pie right to the face is more so what he did. The other team that I tossed out there and a lot of people agreeing with, and I didn't have him top 7, but then the more you think about it, Texans would be kind of intriguing because, Fuller playing a nice alpha, doing a great job of it, but how long is he going to last? There's a good chance that hamstring just pops off the next time he sneezes. And Antonio Brown could be the alpha for Deshaun Watson. That has the most upside, probably, in my opinion.
Maybe, I don't know. I think the most upside is probably the Packers. But I think that if you're going to look at something like that, look at what we know about Antonio Brown's personality and look at what we know about how well the Texans have been run. You don't think you don't think he's just going to like go off on somebody in like the first week or two and be out on the street? He needs to go somewhere that's well run with some sort of structure in place to like keep him from just going nuts. I don't know. Also, but we say about Antonio Brown, you're big on penny stocks.
Right.
It's weird to say somebody like Antonio Brown is a penny stock, but he's the ultimate penny stock at this point.
Absolutely.
Who would have thought we'd ever be putting him in that category? He costs you nothing right now, and the upside is huger than any penny stock you could get your hands on now by far. So if you got a chance, probably by the time this has come out, a bunch of people have already beaten you to the punch. But if you can pick this guy up, pick him up.
Yeah, those would be
what the end of your bench is made for, like the Wolf said.
Exactly. If you're live watching right now, and you haven't gandered,
get him on.
Go get him on your team. There's very few, he's top 100 in my rest of season big board. The upside is unmatchable at this point. That's a great way to put it. So yes, go check. Let us know in the comments too. Where do you want to see him? We'll of course hit them all at the end, but excited to see what you guys think is the ideal spot for him.